You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. And before we dive in, let me give my usual apology for Hebrew pronunciation. My voice isn't a real voice. It's AI generated. And sometimes I make Hebrew sound like a bad GPS system trying to find Yerushalimi Boulevard. So, apologies in advance. Today's topic is Jewish views of who wrote the Bible and the whole world of biblical criticism. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. In fact, it's one of the most fascinating and honestly spicy debates in Jewish thought. Did Moses write the Torah exactly as given by God at Sinai? Did later editors stitch it together? Is it a divine playlist made by multiple authors? Buckle up, because we're going to explore everything from ancient tradition to modern scholarship, and also look at how traditionalists push back hard against the famous documentary hypothesis. The starting point is the traditional Jewish view. The Torah was dictated by God to Moses at Mount Sinai, word for word. Think of it like divine speech to text with no typos. This is what the Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin calls Torah min hashamayim, Torah from heaven. Every single letter, even the crowns on the letters, are holy and intentional. For centuries, this was simply the given truth in Judaism. Rabbis argued about interpretation, about whether eye for an eye means literal or financial damages, but the idea that the Torah wasn't straight from God to Moses? Off the table. Medieval thinkers like Maimonides codified it as one of his 13 principles of faith. Deny that Moses wrote the Torah from God's dictation, and you're outside the core of Jewish belief. So, when modern academic biblical criticism arrived in the 18th and 19th centuries, it wasn't just another scholarly theory. It was a direct challenge to something Judaism had considered foundational for over 2 millennia. So what exactly is biblical criticism? It's not like a Yelp review saying Genesis had too many genealogies, 2 stars. It's the academic study of how the Bible was composed, using history, linguistics, and literary analysis. Scholars notice things like Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 give different creation stories. Exodus and Deuteronomy list the 10 Commandments slightly differently. Sometimes God is called Elohim, sometimes the Tetragrammaton, and certain sections seem obsessed with priestly rituals, while others are more about dramatic storytelling. In the 19th century, German scholars like Julius Wellhausen proposed the most famous theory, the documentary hypothesis. According to it, the Torah is a patchwork quilt stitched together from 4 main sources: J, Yahwist, E, Elohist, P, priestly, and D, Deuteronomist. Imagine 4 different friends making a group Spotify playlist. One adds dramatic ballads, one adds political raps, one adds detailed classical pieces, and one adds ritual chants. Later, an editor hit shuffle, and voila, the Torah. The documentary hypothesis became hugely influential in academic circles. J, the Yahwist, was supposedly written in Judah around the 10th century BCE and calls God by his name. E, the Elohist, maybe from the northern kingdom of Israel, avoids the divine name early on. P, the priestly source, is all about sacrifices, genealogies, and holiness codes, basically the one who made Leviticus. And D, Deuteronomist, gave us the style of Deuteronomy, sermons and centralized worship. These sources, scholars argue, were woven together by a redactor into the Torah we have today. For academics, it explained the double stories, contradictions, and stylistic differences. To them, it was like solving a giant biblical jigsaw puzzle. But for many traditional Jews, it felt like saying the Mona Lisa was just cobbled together from 4 amateur sketches. Not just offensive, it seemed to rip out the heart of Torah's divine authority. Now here's where it gets interesting. Traditionalist scholars and rabbis have raised legitimate problems with the documentary hypothesis. First, it's not really based on hard evidence. There are no ancient scrolls labeled P or J. It's all hypothetical reconstruction. Critics say it assumes too much, like a conspiracy theory that connects dots that might not actually connect. Second, some differences that the theory calls contradictions aren't contradictions at all if you read them in traditional Jewish ways. For example, why 2 creation stories? Rabbis long ago said one is cosmic, the other more human-focused. Why different 10 Commandments? Because one was spoken by God and one remembered by Moses, and Jewish tradition embraces both as equally binding.
There's a moment right before a home repair goes wrong When you say, "What if I try this?" That's when things get really tricky. When it comes to heating, plumbing, and electrical, just leave it to the experts. Crop Metcalf handles everything, from regular home maintenance to worry-free repairs. Book today at serviceexperts.com and save $90 on an HVAC precision tune-up.
Third, stylistic differences don't necessarily prove multiple authors. Anyone who writes knows you don't always sound the same. You might write a legal contract one day and a love letter the next. Moses, or God through Moses, could easily switch tone depending on context. Some Orthodox scholars also point out that the documentary hypothesis keeps changing. At first, it was 4 sources. Then scholars suggested maybe 5 or 7 or dozens. Some now even reject the neat JEPD model altogether, calling it outdated. That instability makes traditionalists say, see, the old-fashioned view is actually more stable. There's also the problem of dating. The theory says certain sections must be later because they assume centralization of worship in Jerusalem. But archaeological findings sometimes throw those assumptions into question. Traditional Jewish thinkers like Rabbi David Tzvi Hoffman in the 19th century already critiqued these theories, showing that the supposed contradictions could be harmonized and that the historical assumptions were shaky. Even today, academic scholars disagree strongly with each other about how to slice up the Torah. To traditionalists, this constant shifting makes it feel like building a house of cards, while Torah min hashamayim stands firm. It's worth noting that not all Jewish approaches are all or nothing. Some modern Jewish thinkers try to blend insights from biblical criticism with faith. Conservative Judaism, for example, often teaches that the Torah was shaped by multiple voices over time, but still views it as divinely inspired and binding. Think of it like open source software. God uploaded the main code at Sinai, and later generations patched and updated, but it's still divine code. Reform Judaism might lean more toward human authorship, but still sees sacred meaning. Meanwhile, Orthodox Judaism continues to uphold divine dictation as the official line, though some Orthodox academics engage cautiously with scholarship. The debate is ongoing, and in a way, it mirrors the Torah itself, layers of conversation across centuries, with voices that don't always agree but keep the tradition alive. From a cultural standpoint, biblical criticism has shaped even secular Jewish identity. Some Jews appreciate the Torah more when they see it as a human divine collaboration. They'll say, look, the fact that multiple authors contributed makes it feel more like the Jewish people's diary, full of complexity, argument, and richness. They compare it to a TV series with multiple writers' rooms, different styles, but one bigger story. Others prefer the simplicity of the traditional view. God gave us the Torah, period. For them, biblical criticism feels like spoilers for a show they'd rather just watch as intended. Jewish humor often sneaks in here too. Of course, the Torah has contradictions. So does my family at Passover. The playfulness actually reflects something deeper. Judaism has always been about wrestling with text, whether through midrash, philosophy, or now modern scholarship. So who wrote the Bible? In Judaism, the answer depends on who you ask. The traditionalist says, God through Moses, no questions asked. The academic says, multiple authors and editors stitched together over centuries. The centrist might say, it's both. The Torah carries divine truth through human expression. What's fascinating is that this debate isn't just intellectual. It shapes Jewish practice and identity. Do you see Torah as a perfect transcript from Sinai, or as a sacred anthology of voices across time? Both views drive how communities pray, teach, and live. And both, in their way, are deeply Jewish. Because wrestling with Torah is as Jewish as eating bagels on Sunday or arguing about which deli makes the best pastrami. And maybe that's the punchline. The Torah itself is a record of arguments. Abraham arguing with God, Moses arguing with Pharaoh, rabbis arguing with each other. So it makes sense that Jews would argue about the Torah's own origins. Whether you stand with Maimonides or with modern biblical critics, the Jewish way is to keep the conversation alive. Maybe the Torah's greatest authorship is not J-E-P-D or even Moses. It's the Jewish people continually engaging with it, turning contradictions into conversation and questions into a form of devotion. And hey, if you think about it, arguing about who wrote the Torah might be the most Jewish thing of all.
At the UPS Store, we ensure your small biz stands out with a variety of high-quality paper stock options, banners, posters, brochures, and more. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. Come into your local store today and get your print on.